Let's talk about the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, obviously the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Now, late at night on Tuesday, there was a markup of the impeachment articles that Republicans have drawn up for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, a longtime target of this Republican majority and the Republican majority before it under the Biden administration. The move is to pass those articles, which they did end up passing late in the night. So early yesterday morning, the articles moved out of committee, and that means they will now be set for a full vote in front of the House. So the House of Representatives will be voting on whether to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. And actually, there's an interesting statistic. This would be like the first time in 150 years that a cabinet secretary faced impeachment, like the second time ever. This was from the New York Times.
Do you know what the first one was?
I don't know who the first one was, but now I'm really curious. Yeah, you go over to Google, figure that one out. But it's not a common thing. I feel like we're almost sort of numb to this happening now from the Trump administration, and that's kind of what why Republicans are arguing that they're doing it is, you know, they're not saying that aloud, but behind closed doors, it's an idea that you fight fire with fire, and that if they're going to impeach Donald Trump 2 times, then you go ahead and impeach one of them. We know, obviously, they've started looking into impeachment. They've opened that inquiry into President Biden, but now they're going after Mayorkas along similar lines. But the problem about these impeachment articles, and I think Mayorkas is doing a horrible job, the problem is an interesting one. So let's start playing some clips of the debate in the committee, which get to sort of the heart of what's going on. I'll start with this tweet from Mike Johnson. This is his statement. We'll put this up on the screen. The Speaker, Mike Johnson, since the moment he was confirmed, Secretary Mayorkas has willfully and consistently refused to comply with federal immigration laws, fueling the worst border catastrophe in American history. He said, I commend the House Homeland Security Committee for conducting a thorough and exhaustive investigation into Secretary Mayorkas's failed leadership of the department. He also says that Mayorkas, quote, violated his oath of office and obstructed lawful oversight of DHS. So pin those two things because they're important to these articles of impeachment. And let's roll this next clip, which I believe is Representative Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, talking during this debate that went into, again, the early hours of the morning yesterday.
And any shortcomings that Mayorkas may have, frankly, are your fault. He's asking for authorities to do more, to have more border agents, to have more resources. And so his limitations are caused by you. You put him in place. You won't let him do it.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene was sitting just across the room from him. Let's roll a clip of MTG laying into Mayorkas.
Congress has the responsibility to hold the executive branch accountable when they fail to uphold their oath of office, abuse their authority, and or are dishonest with the American people. This is essential in a constitutional republic built on and separation of powers. In its 2023 ruling in United States versus Texas, the Supreme Court left the House of Representatives with little choice but to pursue impeachment articles against Secretary Mayorkas. Secretary Mayorkas must be impeached for his failure to uphold his oath of office and for willfully breaking federal immigration laws.
So again, you heard right there, oath of office, and for his failure to willfully uphold federal immigration laws. Krystal, before we get your thoughts, let's roll this clip of Chip Roy, again, getting at the heart of the impeachment articles, and that's what we'll open up for discussion right after you hear this exchange between Chip Roy and Mayorkas. And if you're watching this, you'll see the date. It's 2022 on your screen, so pay attention to that as well.
Will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no?
Yes, we do. And
we have operational control of the borders.
Yes, we do. And Congressman, we are working to...
Listen what operational control defined. In this section, the term operational control means the prevention of all unlawful entries into the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. Do you stand by in your testimony that we have operational control in light of this definition?
I do. And Congressman, I think the Secretary of Homeland Security would have said the same thing in 2020. and in 2019.
So Republicans have been using a clip of a deputy of Mayorkas who has said, obviously, we don't have operational control of the border, and testified to prove that Mayorkas lied when he said that they had operational control of the border. Mayorkas said he was using a different definition of operational control with a lower standard of what constitutes operational control. But the articles of impeachment accuse him of violating provisions of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which we were talking before the school. They require that migrants, quote, shall be detained pending a decision on whether or not they should be removed. So if they're claiming asylum, you typically, if you have a normal immigration system, that's what would happen. But that has not been upheld in years and years and years. It's basically impossible. I mean, I don't know how that would be possible. That's why the Trump administration also didn't do it, because it's not possible with the number of people that you have going. So the oath of office, the knowingly made false statements, these are the articles of impeachment. And if your argument is that we need to impeach Mayorkas because they impeached Trump, that actually is probably more, and we know it's not going to go anywhere because we're just the House of Representatives and it's never going to pass the Senate. It's more of a symbolic impeachment. If that's your argument, it actually is probably stronger than the legal constitutional case for impeachment here, because I don't think it quite meets the bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's theater.
It's theater.
It's hard. I mean, I don't even want to really dig into like what they're claiming and what he said and operational. If that's your definition of operational control, literally that has never happened in the history of the United States, and it will never happen in the history of the United States, that you know every single person that comes in. There's going to be at least one who gets by. Then you don't have operational control. So, I mean, there's a reason I looked up who was the last cabinet secretary to be impeached.
Oh gosh, who was it?
May 1876, Secretary of War William Belknap, who apparently, I'll read, this is kind of funny. This is from Senate.gov. So they say, at issue was the behavior of William Belknap. He was part of the administration of President Ulysses S. Grant, former Iowa state legislator and Civil War general. He held his cabinet post for nearly 8 years. In the rollicking era that Mark Twain dubbed the Gilded Age, Belknap was famous for his extravagant Washington parties and his elegantly attired first and second wives. Many question how he managed such a grand lifestyle on his $8,000 government salary. By early 1876, answers began to surface. A House of Representatives committee uncovered evidence supporting a pattern of corruption blatant even by the standards of the scandal-tarnished Grant administration. Now, it's interesting history. I also do think it's relevant here, though, because it's not like he was impeached for, the policy that he was implementing, because he was impeached based on his personal conduct and allegations of corruption, which apparently had quite a bit of merit, judging by the addresses of his first and second wives. So does anyone really believe that Secretary Mayorkas is the locus of the issues in terms of immigration? Like, we have been having debates and struggles over immigration and border security and how to handle immigrants that come in and claim asylum. We've been having these debates for decades. They did not start with Secretary Mayorkas. They will not end with Secretary Mayorkas. I have no opinion on this man's conduct and whether he's been a good or bad secretary, how he is, whether he's competent at his job. But he's clearly trying to implement the policy that's been directed to him by the president. And I actually think Swalwell's point is a reasonable one of the biggest, there's a lot of issues, but the biggest issue in terms of our immigration policy is this massive 3 million case asylum backlog, which means, exactly like you said, people come because they know that they can say, I'm claiming asylum, and it will be years before it's adjudicated.
Right.
The best thing you could do to deal with that problem is not, as the Senate negotiated bill contemplates, just, okay, we're just going to close the border and end due process. No, the biggest thing is to have a massive scale up in resources so that you actually have a shot to be able in a timely fashion to adjudicate these asylum claims and say, yes, this one meets the definition, and no, many of these other ones don't. So you can handle it in some sort of judicious manner. Mayorkas is not a magician. He can't magically make all of that happen or magically make the 3 million case backlog go away without support for Congress. So when you couple that their response is this show trial and these, fake impeachment, articles of impeachment that they know aren't going to go anywhere, with their rejection of the Senate negotiated package, which I oppose because it's too draconian, but which is consistent with the things they claim to care about and support. It's just very clear to me that they like immigration as a political issue. They like the images of migrants at the border. They like the narrative of no operational control and chaos under Joe Biden, et cetera, but they don't actually even support the things that they claim to support, which I don't support again, but they don't even really back up their words and the things that they claim to believe with any sort of governance or action. They just like it as a political issue.
Establishment Republicans sure as hell don't. I mean, you'll hear Mitch McConnell talk all day about the border. And then, you know, we have completely different takes on the Senate bill because that one would still, like, from my perspective, it doesn't even crack down until you're like 1.8 million people, like 5,000 people a day is when it starts to, the standard sets in for when you have automatic detention and removal of migrants. And it's just Mitch McConnell all day. He'll use the border as a political issue. He won't take a vote on anything hard, ever, never. He would never do that because there's a lot of cheap labor to be had, and we could get into that whole debate. I know we probably disagree on some of those things, but I share the frustration of this, like basically just being a political wedge issue for the political establishment to bash over and over again. And honestly, I think Mayorkas has done a terrible job. I think Biden has done a terrible job. I think it's frightening, what we don't know about how many people are here. I think it's frightening for people's safety, how many are living in the shadows of our society in sanctuary cities where they're like in danger. They come over here in debt to cartels. It's just horrific. Many of them have been raped, sexually assaulted on the way, and then are still in debt to cartels. And I wonder, actually, if there was a much better avenue for impeachment over the people who have died crossing the river, over the people who have, you know, come here in debt to cartels and been victims of violence, over the people who have been victimized. I mean, it was like 35,000 arrests last year, or removals last year of people who had been in the country illegally with a criminal record. Why not any of that? And it kind of gets to your point that the human element of this gets lost in the political element of it because it's more fun to just use this stuff as a weapon.
Yeah, I mean, Sagar and I covered the other day Senator Langford, who was like sort of adorable in his shock that the Republicans in the House were not going to accept this deal. Because it's not just this deal, which, again, I don't support because I don't think the answer to we don't have enough resources to, you know, go through a due process. The answer to that is more resources so that you can deal with the flow and get it under control so that there isn't this sense of, oh, I can just show up and claim asylum and it's going to be years and years before this is adjudicated. But he was sort of like, I thought you guys like agreed with me on this. And also, by the way, you all were the ones who pushed for this to be paired with Ukraine aid and Israel aid. You know, the whole idea was like, we're not going to give any money to care about Ukrainian borders before we deal with our borders. So Democrats are like, okay, we'll, you know, combine these things together. And when the rubber meets the road, some of them were out and out like, no, we're not going to, quote unquote, give Joe Biden a win. Now, again, on the other side of this, I don't think that this is good politics for the Biden administration either. Anytime that the policy discussion is focused on immigration and where the narrative and the argument is all on the side of we need harsher policies and we need to shut down the border, et cetera, you are not going to out immigration hardline Donald Trump. That's not going to happen. So if you're making this the center of political conversation, if you're accepting that framing of like the thing we need to really do is be harsh and crack down at the border, that is not going to be a winning argument for you. And you've already lost progressives, young people, you know, a lot of constituencies in the Democratic Party based on your support, unconditional support for Israel. Now you're antagonizing them on this issue as well. So you're further demoralizing your own base. You're not winning any immigration hardliners over. So I think it's foolish from their political perspective as well. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to this impeachment situation, like bottom line to me is it's a political stunt. It's symbolic of the fact that most of Washington revolves around political stunts at this point, you know, outside of any like real genuine attempt to try to address the problem, even if you don't 100% agree with the solutions and find common ground. No. It's all about what can I do for the cameras? What can I do to spur my own fundraising base? You know, how can I own a lib and have a viral moment that's going to help me raise money for my own campaign? That's what all of our politics centers around. And this like whole impeachment situation, I think, fits squarely in that mold.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I think Biden's critics really do have, as much as I disagree with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and basically everyone, but as much as I disagree with them, this is one of these issues where they should have the moral high ground. People are dying. People are being abused. Our government is literally helping the UN hand out debit cards in the Darien Gap, which people die crossing. It's not good. It's horrible. And this just seems like such a small ball excuse to even do the political theater.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.